Let's talk about the Metabones Speed Booster, specifically the XL version, which I have right here. Now, most people are pretty familiar with these speed boosters nowadays, but I just thought I'd share some of my quick thoughts about the XL version, specifically how it relates to Canon glass and the GH4 or other similar Micro Four Third cameras. Now, the XL, there are some restrictions, so make sure it works with your particular camera, but I use it with the GH4 and it works really well. It gives you a little bit wider field of view, a little bit extra light, and a little bit shallower depth of field in relation to where you're positioning a camera. I know that's not technically true that you get shallower depth of field and people go back and forth all day, but essentially when you're widening the field of view, you can get a little bit closer and thus create a shallower depth of field look. You increase the light, yada, yada, yada. You basically create a larger sensor look on a smaller sensor camera. I think the GH4 is a great camera to have right out of the box, but using a speed booster or something like it does help give it that extra edge when you're talking about other people who have larger sensor cameras, because let's face it, people like the shallow depth of field look, they like the larger sensor size look, and it's nice to have something to be able to offer that when you're shooting with the GH4 or similar Micro Four Third camera. Now, there are some knockoff versions you can find online of the speed booster. They usually go by Lens Turbo or something like that. I've talked about them before in blog articles and other videos, and I have a few myself that I use pretty frequently. But the thing with the cheaper knockoff versions is that you have to be really careful with how you use them. Oftentimes, the cheaper versions will get really weird color distortions in certain lighting conditions, specifically when there's a lot of light or there's a heavy backlight. So one common occurrence of this is if you're shooting something with a white background where it's that kind of white seamless look, oftentimes that can mess those speed booster, Lens Turbo, cheap knockoff things. It can mess them up. You get weird blue spots, the color changes, and it doesn't look very good. Almost like it's flaring, but inside nearer the sensor, and it just doesn't look very good. These Metabones speed boosters, I suspect, are capable of similar weirdness, but to a much lesser degree. I haven't run into it, and anytime I'm shooting in a situation like that, I really am on the lookout for it. But with these Metabones ones, they are better, but you are paying a significant price increase to have that. I will say, if you're looking to get a Metabones speed booster adapter, be really cautious about your camera and what you plan to do with that camera in the future. The reason I say that is these go for anywhere from like $500 to $600 depending on which version you get. With the Canon one, you get electronic aperture control and autofocus, which may or may not work in all cases, but with these, you're investing in something that works for your current camera. But if you don't plan on sticking with Micro Four Thirds and you buy a new camera in a year or two, you're now stuck with an adapter that essentially does you no good, and you spent $600 on it potentially, and now it's just a piece of glass and metal that sits in your cabinet. You might be able to sell it, but at that time, if the latest and greatest newest thing has a different lens mount, then you may be out of luck because people might not want to buy it. So be very careful. Make sure that when you buy something like this, you are making the investment for the long term or the foreseeable future, or it makes a lot of sense for your business. Oftentimes you'll be just fine with the cheaper Lens Turbo as long as you're aware of its limitations in certain situations. As far as sharpness, field of view, everything you would expect, the Metabones Speed Booster does a great job, and I definitely recommend this XL version just for that extra little bit of push and of wideness and field of view extension that you get with it compared to the traditional regular speed booster. I love how it works with the Canon glass. We have a lot of Canon glass because for the photos, we typically use a 5D Mark III, and for video, we typically use the GH4. So with these speed boosters, it's really nice to be able to swap that glass back and forth and use stuff like the 50 1.2 that I have over here with another speed booster on this camera. That's right, I'm actually using a Metabones speed booster on there as well because we had two of them on rental from Lens Rentals. Now, Metabones hasn't paid me to say any of this. Lens Rentals hasn't paid me to say any of this. This is all gear that we rented for a recent shoot, and I just thought I would share my thoughts and kind of impressions and advice and general recommendations on the Metabones Speed Booster XL. It's really handy to have, a little bit expensive, but what you get out of it can really be worth it, especially if you're looking for that larger sensor look with a camera like the GH4, which often I am. I love the GH4. It just a little limited by that sensor size. So something like this, whether it's the cheaper knockoff version or the official name brand thing, in either case, it really helps elevate the image quality that you can get from a GH4 or similar Micro Four Thirds camera.